Death row is quiet, except for the murmured praying from one of my fellow condemned to die. It's not his day, it's mine, but he prays all the same, for himself and for each man ahead of him that makes that last lonely walk to the execution chamber. In 60 minutes, it'll be my turn to make that walk. In a week, it's his. You'd think death row would be a madhouse, condemned men screaming and ranting against the system that condemned them to death. I certainly thought I'd be doing both those things, but that was back when the shock of my sentence was still fresh, back when I had years of appeals and fighting ahead of me, back when there was a sliver of hope that this terrible nightmare could all go away. Now though, well, I've accepted my fate. I'm not fooling myself anymore. I deserve it for what I did. As I sit here waiting to be executed, all I can think about is that night. The night I had my own family slaughtered like animals. I'd set the whole thing up because, well, that's something I'm still struggling to understand today. I lied to my mom, my pop, and my brother, and I told them I just passed my final exams with flying colors, and I said, hey, we should go out and celebrate. And that's what we did. And at the time, my partner in crime was hiding inside our family home, waiting to gun us down on our return. Gun them down, I should say. I was supposed to look like the fortunate survivor of the ordeal, the victim, a young man who'd lost his nearest and dearest. When we got home, that evening, we were met by a man in a ski mask, and the bullets rang out. Brother down, mother down, father down, and me, well, I took a hit to the arm in what was a choreographed struggle. With an hour to go before they inject me with a cocktail of deadly drugs, that's all I can think about. How could I do such a thing? No doubt you think I'm evil, no doubt you think I deserve to die, but please hear me out first. I haven't given up completely just yet. There's still a chance for a last-minute pardon. I have a lot of people fighting for me, including my father, who survived that terrible night. Can you believe that? He said he forgave me. I think he's a braver man than I could ever be. I'm waiting for the governor to call to stay my execution. I'm hoping for the best, which is a sentence of life without the possibility of parole. Better than dying young, I guess. I'm currently in what's called the death house. That's a special cell, the last stop before the execution room. It's hard to find anything likable about this place, given that in an hour I'll no longer be in this world, but at least there's a shower in here. At least there's a kind of a view. It's not for my benefit though, it's so I can be observed by the guard. They don't want me trying to hurt myself before they lay me down on that gurney. You're probably wondering what I got for a last meal, but I'm afraid to tell you that I had nothing special at all. I received no steak, no pizza, no cans of Coca-Cola, no double fudge chocolate cake. I guess I got the standard prison fare. And that's because I'm in Texas, and because some dude a while ago had ordered a huge meal and eaten none of it. The state stopped letting prisoners order a bespoke last meal after that guy rubbed pie in their faces. Some people really do just want to watch the world burn. Thanks for nothing, a-hole. I had my last visit with my father earlier in the morning. The next time he'll see me, I'll be lying on the gurney and he'll be on the other side of that thick observation glass. He was there at my birth, watched me come into this world, and now he'll watch me leave it. Poor guy. What have I done to him? It's like I told the chaplain this morning. I don't want anyone to forgive me for what I did, but for my father's sake, I think I should be allowed to live. You see, I wasn't brought up like most kids. I was spoiled, and I mean very spoiled. I don't know. I guess when you grow up in an environment in which you have everything, well, you can end up not appreciating anything. And I had everything I wanted. Amazing toys when I was young. My parents bought me a townhouse when I got older. They gave me an expensive Swiss watch and bought me not one but a bunch of expensive sports cars. How'd that make you feel? Asked the chaplain just a few hours ago. I told him I was the unhappiest kid in the world at times. I was mentally unwell and I was selfish to the highest degree. I was barely even human. I grew up with the riches and I began to see the riches as the very meaning of life. I didn't value life itself. I didn't value love, friendship, not even the security I'd been granted. As for my parents, well, they were in the way of me acquiring more wealth. They were giving me all that cash and they thought I was doing really well in college. What they didn't know is that I wasn't even attending college. I was plotting their assassination. I wanted everything, the life insurance, the entire family fortune. There's pacing from one of the guards. Sorry, each time he makes his rounds, it breaks my concentration. This isn't like regular lockup. They do regular foot patrols to make sure nobody's hurting themselves. Kind of ironic, considering I'll be dead in, about another 46 minutes now. Where was I? Oh yeah, I wasn't right in the head. That's for sure. I'd been a troubled kid since I was old enough to tie my own shoelaces. In my teens, they said I had a personality disorder after I'd been caught stealing. And there I was, a child born to obscene wealth, the kid with a wide-open mouth full of silver spoons, and I still wanted to take what wasn't rightfully mine. To be honest, I think that's why my parents bought me all those gifts. They thought that might stop me from stealing. What they didn't know is that it wasn't the loot I was interested in, it was the crime itself that appealed to me. The kid who had everything needed a hit, and crime was my drug. Well, I was doing a lot of illegal substances too, which didn't help my state of mind. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Another 40 minutes and I'll die, or I will if that phone doesn't ring and the governor puts a stop to all this. Another 5 minutes and the warden comes by my cell. The execution room is all in order. I'm told it'll be painless. My father will be watching from an observation room, and some of my extended family members will be there. My mother and my brother are already on the other side, thanks to me and my unforgivable crime. Will I meet them on the other side? The chaplain would probably say yes, but personally I have my doubts. I don't think we're headed for the same place. I have to tell you, that crime wasn't a spur-of-the-moment thing. A couple of years before I had them gunned down for real, I'd plotted to have them all executed. They actually got wind of the rumors after it circulated as to what I was planning, but I just told them I joked about it. Come on, I said, do you really think I'd kill my own family? They believed me, of course, because who wants to think a kid would plot to murder his own family? To all outward appearances, I loved all of them, but it was my younger brother that I was closest to. I loved him, I cherished him. But you know what? I also felt like I lived in his shadow. I never felt like I reached the same love as he did from our parents. And maybe that made me jealous, or maybe it made me angry, I don't know. The old memories hurt too much, so I've tried my best over the years to not think about them. What happened to me? How did a sweet boy become a teenager the media would say became a ticking time bomb of rage? What happened to the kid who cycled for hundreds of miles with his adoring father? I can't tell what snapped inside of me. I'm sorry, I just can't. I guess I thought I'd never fit in, and I was greedy. And that night of the murders, I couldn't stop thinking about the man in the black ski mask waiting in our home, waiting for us to walk through that front door so he could gun down every single one of my family members. But as much as I kept thinking about it, I said nothing. I could have stopped it. It would have been as simple as asking that we all go for ice cream or to a movie. If I just delayed them by an hour or more, the gunmen would have left the house, thinking something had gone wrong. Then I could call the whole thing off. But I didn't. I ate my meal and I watched my family eat theirs, their last meal on Earth, well, for most of them. And as we approached the house, you could say I was just on autopilot. I really wasn't aware of what was happening. The crime had been all set up, all I had to do was go along with it. We all got out of the car, but I went back to get a cell phone I'd left in the back seat. My brother, meanwhile, walked into the door first, followed by my mother, and that's when my accomplice opened fire. A second accomplice waited in a getaway car. They fled, and I pretended the whole thing had been a burglary gone wrong. I feigned shock and I wept a river of tears. The neighbors couldn't believe that this thing had happened in their sleepy upper middle-class neighborhood. I cried and I cried big fat crocodile tears, which mixed with my brother's blood on my hands and the face. Both my accomplices were eventually arrested. The cops knew I'd plotted to kill my parents in the past, and they knew I had likely orchestrated the killings to get my hands on over $1 million in life insurance and whatever else was left to me. They were also suspicious about the burglary itself. How come stacks of cash, jewelry, and other valuables hadn't been taken? Investigators knew there was more to the story. I'd already fled to Mexico, though, where I got a job in a furniture store. I made a lot of new friends down there and told them all that the bullet wound I had was from fighting in Afghanistan. I told them the exact opposite of my real-life story, that I grew up poor, my mom sold her body on the streets, and I became an orphan. Just over 2 years later, the authorities finally found me. I was arrested in Mexico and sent back to the US to pay for my atrocity. The shooter I'd hired got life with the possibility of parole after 30 years, and the driver got 15 years. And me, well, as you know, I got the death penalty. Years passed, spending 23 hours a day in that hellhole they call death row. It's hard not to lose your mind there. I have a lot of support, but my biggest supporter has always been my father, the man I tried to have killed, the man whose wife and son I had killed. Why, might you ask? Would this man talk about his love for me on TV and visit me often? Why would this man help with my appeals for clemency? Well, I've changed. My pop has seen me change. I know what I did was unforgivable, but in the end, if they kill me, they're making my father a victim again. 30 minutes to go. I take a shower and change into a fresh prison jumpsuit. The state wants you to look your best as they put you to death. I do it because, well, I don't really have much else to do. I sit on my bed, freshly showered in a clean jumpsuit, and the minutes tick by. 20 minutes to go. I'm still holding out for the governor to call and stop this thing, if only for my father's sake. Killing me would kill him. He doesn't deserve that. Over the years that I've been in here, I've had 2 appeals turned down, so it looks like the authorities really want me gone. It's actually incredibly rare to get clemency once you've been handed the death penalty. Sure, quite a lot of innocent guys have been exonerated from death row, but the state doesn't often have a change of heart, and it takes a lot of evidence to convince them of innocence. I'm asking for mercy, not forgiveness. I'll live my life with a mark of Cain, but my father deserves better. His rationale is, if they kill me, how is justice being served, since he'll be the only victim remaining? 15 minutes now. The chaplain's back again, and he tells me that everything's set up. Is there anything you want to say to me? He asks. Anything you need to clear up before you go? I think for a while. What can I possibly talk about? I said all I had to say to my father this morning, and he told me in return that he had written to the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles and had even managed to talk in person to the chairman of the board. My pop pleaded with this guy to go speak to the governor and explain that he wants his son alive. Instead, I asked the chaplain to update me on sports. Unfortunately, this guy isn't into sports. I think he was expecting to hear some profound final statement, perhaps so he could pass the message on to God. He tells me that my father, some journalists, and some state-selected witnesses are already waiting in the observation room. The curtain, he says, is drawn, so when I get to the execution room, they won't be able to see me right away. I guess that's probably so the witnesses can avoid having to sit through a man fighting with the guards as they try to strap him down. Me? Well, I got no fight left in me. I deserve this. After the priest leaves, I watch the minute hand on the clock hanging off the wall. Tick, tick, tick. It's time. The warden comes to my cell and explains that he'll be walking with me to the room. I don't make a fuss. I've had a lot of time to think about this. Still in handcuffs and shackles, I walk to the room with the warden and 2 other death row guards. When I enter the room, there's some medical personnel, and I'm laid down on the gurney and strapped in. Those curtains, still not open. The first thing they do is hook me up to an electrocardiogram machine. That way they know when my heart stops. Should be over in minutes, but once I read it took almost 2 hours for one guy to die. They insert 2 intravenous cannulas into my arms through which the drugs will flow into my veins. Everything's sterilized, and you might wonder why if I'm gonna die anyway. The reason is because that phone could ring and a stay of execution, meaning a suspension of execution, could happen. That's why they don't want to contaminate a person's blood. It would be the first time an execution's been called off when the IVs are already in the arms, but it's a matter of seconds, and if that phone doesn't ring, I'm gone. The curtains are drawn back, but I can't see anyone because the window is a one-way mirror. I think of my father's face and the sadness that I've caused him. I just hope he can live in peace now. I'm ready to go when something unexpected happens. Those curtains are closed again. The warden looks at me and says, "Your execution's been stayed." I don't think I can explain to you just how that feels. I was prepared to die. I'd made my peace with death. In a way, I already was dead. My father saved me. His letter to the Texas Board of Pardons and Parole has worked. The board unanimously voted to keep me alive, and the governor accepted their recommendation. I was spared at the last minute. I will serve life without a possibility of parole, but at least I'll be able to see my father and not have to stay in that hell they call death row. Now go watch this video, what the last 24 hours of death row prisoners look like in 2019. Or have a look at this.